Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. This, of course, is the Independence Day edition, and I'm going to spare you a long rant about how we are not an independent quote-unquote nation, and instead are a bunch of corporate slaves in a worldwide feudal nightmare. What I will do is talk about a couple of issues that I think are very important. One is the Barclay scandal, which doesn't seem to be getting much press, at least here in the corporate states of America. And that has Barclays apparently engaging in collusion with other banks and financial institutions at setting interest rates. There does seem to be some indication that someone in the know in Barclays may be willing to trade some names in order to reduce his liability when it comes to a trial. But I'm not holding my breath that anything's really going to come out about that. But the key thing here is that no one should be surprised by this, because this is the nature of the so-called market that rules the planet today. They're all in collusion with each other, and they are all in the business of working behind the scenes to maximize the profits of everybody in the system. Occasionally you might get a little bit of biting here and there between them, but basically they're all on the same page. And what usually will maximize the profits of one group will maximize the profits of another. Therefore, you have this. So maybe something to look at. Something else that is not getting a lot of press, of course, is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which seemingly is virtually unknown to any media outlets here in the corporate states of America. You can find a couple of articles online about this, and what it appears to be is a completely corporate-driven Trans-Pacific trade deal, which will basically allow companies here in the United States to offshore, outsource, and do other things with basically absolutely no accountability here in the United States, and will allow them to maximize their profits by utilizing slave labor in other countries much more easily, and have absolutely no recourse, hide their assets, and all that stuff that we've seen, developing over the last several, decades and decades. So that's another thing that might be worthy of a look. And what's really disgusting to me, what makes me sicker than anything else, is the fact that all of this is done so fucking openly that everybody in Congress and the Senate and everybody else are just a bunch of dicks. And the only thing they give a shit about at all is the fact that they get paid and they want to maximize their fucking payments. And the way to do that is to burrow themselves in with the corporate governance of this fucking so-called country. So they don't even care. Well, they never did, but it's important for you to realize that they just simply don't care. The so-called government, which is actually a government of the corporation, by the corporation, and for the corporation, does not give one shit about anybody in this country. And all you have to do is look throughout history, and you'll find example after example after example of this. So on this July 4th, another interesting topic would be to examine Mitt Romney's tactic for getting elected this year. And I think it's actually rather brilliant on his part, since everybody knows that he is a man that has changed his position on just about everything, just about every way he possibly could. Now I believe his strategy will be to not say what his position is on anything ever. And he will allude to how he will make changes, he will, he will institute new policy, He will change laws. All these things is going to be talking about change and restructuring and all of this other kind of stuff, but he's never going to say what it is he's going to do. He's never going to say what his ultimate purpose is. He's never going to answer any direct questions about any positions that he holds. And I think that might work in his favor simply because if he doesn't take a position, then people can elide rather the actual stand that he has, and he could fool some people that way. And certainly the way the money is falling this year, it looks like Romney is going to win. Now, in the final analysis, when it comes to the presidential race, certainly, as I've said many times before, there is absolutely no difference between any candidate that ever makes it to the national stage. If they do, they have already been bought off. They've already become enmeshed and embroiled in the system. And then once they're in that system, they are bound and pledged to support it at all costs. And that means to throw under the bus everybody that ever supported them, everybody that ever believed in them, and anybody that ever had any kind of idea about what their so-called guy in the White House was going to do for them. So anybody who actually still believes that any candidate running for office is really going to do something to help you or do something to better this so-called country, you know, when are you ever going to realize the facts just by looking at history and seeing the blatant, bald-faced mess that has been inflicted upon the populace in this corporate America? Maybe never. You know, hopefully someday you will. So, and one other thing, and that is that, of course, I can't stand any of these people. I hate Obama, and I hate Mitt Romney. So, as far as I'm concerned, there is no choice. It's garbage and garbage. So, you know, that's why I will not be participating. And I'm not going to tell you what to do because that's your business. But if I were you, I wouldn't participate either, because all it does is give a air of legitimacy to a completely corrupt and destructive system. So, finally, the last issue. It has recently surfaced that according to emails between high-level officials at Penn State, that in fact the non-pursuit of Jerry Sandusky by the school, or the fact that they did not turn him over to authorities, seems to have been the result of actions of Joe Paterno. That he convinced Curley and others in the administration at the school to not send the case to the police or to prosecutors. So once again, you can see the absolute fact of this, and that is that all of these people knew what was going on, including Joe Paterno. And he probably knew for decades what was going on, and did absolutely nothing, while young teens and boys were systematically abused and raped by a horrible monster under the auspices of Penn State University, the Second Mile Foundation charity, and who knows what other venues he was involved in. They all knew. It's possible that some of these people may be engaged in these activities themselves. And I absolutely guarantee that this pedophilia, molestation scandal, if you want to call it that, is so far into the system of all of these schools and places where children come together, schools and daycare centers and you name it, wherever there are children or young people who are brought together in situations where you have mentor-like people above them, you're going to have pedophilia and molestation, because those kinds of groups attract the horrid, disgusting, filth-ridden fucking animals that prey on children. So they're infested throughout all of these systems and institutions. When you look in Europe, you see the Dutroux affair in Belgium, which seems to indicate that that is something that is throughout the entire continent of Europe. Every country seems to be involved and touching in that way. And that they're desperately shoveling dirt on top of that, trying to cover that up. And you can absolutely guarantee that the most that will come out of this Penn State debacle is that they may throw a couple more people to the wolves and give them a couple years for failure to act or failure to promptly report. While the reality of it is that this will go through, if they really wanted to solve it, it would go through the entire government of Pennsylvania, throughout this state, and throughout the entirety of Penn State University, and every other school, I would imagine, as well. And the fact that that won't get done should be enough to indicate to you that there is a huge crisis problem there that they are desperate to keep inside that box that it's in, and then throw it into a deep hole and cover it up. So that's what's going to happen now. And the saddest reality of that is that they're going to continue to be victims. And these are young, totally defenseless children who end up with their entire lives destroyed by horrid fucking predators. And when you have a system which refuses to recognize the defenseless and the innocent and do everything in its fucking power to preserve their innocence and to make sure that they are safe, then what can you say about it except that it is a completely fucked up and useless system that needs to be brought down? You certainly can't support it, because you're supporting the exploitation and the horrific mangling, mutilation, and life destruction of young people. And that's a nightmare. Thank you. Good day.